Hi guys, this is Fahad Syed from Pixel Icons, and today I wanted to talk to you about a game I recently played. Lately, a lot of YouTubers I've been subscribed to have been touching on or talking about two games and what they mean in the broader context of games. See, within the medium there hasn't been a strong consensus on what games should be and what they even are. Some of them see games as exclusively art, and others as exclusively entertainment products. Most of us see them as a merger of the two, artistic expressions that are consumed like entertainment products, and held up in the same regard. I recently got to play one of these two games, Her Story. I'll focus on Her Story, because this little game has done quite a lot. I'm too young of a gamer to remember when the first FMV games came out on the Atari Jaguar and Sega Saturn. Hell, I don't even know if those are the consoles they came out on. What I do remember is seeing the Angry Video Game Nerd's videos on these type of games. While his videos had a sophomoric charm to their humor, the games are cringeworthy interactive movies that didn't feel like anything that could be more than tech demos. Back then, I would have never thought that these type of games could ever take off again. If there's anything I've learned from the indie scene, however, it's that these games are made by those people who see potential in other games. Someone had to have played an FMV game, and either enjoyed it, or seen what could be done with it. The sad thing is, I know people will be saying that Her Story is not a game because it lacks meaningful and deep mechanics. Most people will probably point to the minigame in the trash bin on the desktop as having more game than Her Story. However, everything in Her Story is set up to mesh together. I'm hesitant about spoiling Her Story, so I decided to split this video up into two parts. The first part will cover what I consider to be this game's importance. I will be using clips of this game in the first part to illustrate points, and also to keep you, the viewer, visually interested. But whenever possible, I will be cutting out the subtitles and muting the dialogue so nothing is really spoiled. Without further delay, let's jump right in. To start off, I want to say this game is all about defying industry expectations and standards, except for its length, which is about as long as other experimental indie games, like Dear Esther and Gone Home. More on that later, obviously in part 2. The premise of Her Story is you, the player, are logged into an old computer with archived footage of a series of interrogations. You aren't given an explicit goal, but you quickly get drawn into searching through the archival footage, which you have to do so by entering in keywords, and even then you are only limited to the first 5 results. Right away, I found the game to be the type of quirky thing that's right up my alley. The screen you are on has a non-standard resolution, and the developer has taken very intricate and well thought out measures to reincarnate that old Apple II-like look. For starters, there's this weird glare and dirt on the computer screen. It's done very well and isn't intrusive at all, but the option to turn it off is there. Personally, I loved it and preferred it on, so I kept it on. The computer functions that are emulated in this game are done very well. Pretty soon you forget that you are playing a game. You get sucked right in. From the readme files you can completely ignore on the desktop, to the noises it makes when you type, this game just bleeds immersion. But what exactly is there to get immersed in? If this game is just about watching these video snippets, then these clips have to be good, right? Well, they are.
Simon is 6 foot, darkish blonde hair, average build. He's clean shaven. If his beard grows, it goes ginger, so he shaves it. I mean, not that there's anything wrong with ginger hair. I bought a photo. They said a spring photo. This was taken last year on holiday in Rome. It's the best one I have.
The actress who mainly appears in them, Viva Seifert, does an excellent job. In fact, her performance feels genuine in a way that I haven't really seen from many of the movies I've watched and cutscenes and games I've recently played. It draws you right in. The plot is complicated enough to make you work. You start paying attention to timestamps, trying to keep track of who is who, and when the order of events are supposed to take place in. When you start piecing things together, there's this aha moment that you scarcely get in games these days. Outside of other good indie puzzle games, there's rarely a whodunit that feels this satisfying to complete. When I finished Her Story, I realized this game is very literary. It's very artistic. What the hell does that even mean? Gamers are so caught up in trying to get the rest of the world to recognize games as being art that they rarely, if ever, even stop to ask what exactly being artistic entails. Unlike Gone Home, which I would just describe as a good game with excellent environmental storytelling, this game really drew an emotional response out of me. I was genuinely feeling empathetic for the characters. I was able to really step into their heads and understand them. Additionally and importantly, there wasn't anything inhibiting me interfacing with the medium. Since this game emulates a computer screen, I never really felt pulled out like I did a few times at Gone Home. There were no objects that I couldn't pick up. There wasn't anything that popped out of the screen when it shouldn't have. Well, actually there was, but the most immersion-breaking experiences I had were so small that it didn't even really count as pulling me out. The thing is, the power in art is that it immerses you and gets you connected with it. Each medium does this in different ways. Books immerse you differently than movies, and movies differently than games. The more interaction you add into the medium, the more complicated the immersion gets. Some things become easier to get immersed in, other aspects become more visible and can ruin the experience. If Gone Home was a demonstration that environmental storytelling is valid and good gameplay, then Her Story is a demonstration that immersion makes for good gameplay and is valid as a game. Outside of what Her Story does for the medium of games, Her Story is also literary in that it brings a good, if not somewhat overt story to the table that is a worthy experience. There are deep themes in this game, and while it tries very hard to smash them into your head with a sledgehammer and thinks it's subtle, the themes themselves do fit very well and the game successfully matches its tones to its themes. There were a few small technical issues I had with this game. For starters, and literally at the start, I had double-clicked on one of the clips, and the audio played twice with only one video. It was a bad experience, and I actually quit the game to stop the rest of the audio from playing through. Secondly, the game's main window would sometimes not be responsive when I tried to drag it around. Thankfully, that only happened twice in the whole game. Overall, I would definitely recommend it to anyone who's looking for a good mystery game, or just wants to try something new. I don't think this type of game will appeal to everyone, but a game that appeals to everyone is a hard thing to come by, and usually makes some artistic sacrifices to do so. I do think this game is slightly overpriced, as I would personally price it at $4 instead of $6 due to its lack of replay value, and its shorter size. But I think the asking price is fair for the developer, so if you don't mind spending the extra $2 on it, then go right ahead. I just want to preface part 2 by saying that this is one of those games where the experience is diminished by spoilers. But if you have either finished this game already, never plan on playing it, or don't care about spoilers, let's jump right in. I would like to now share with you my opinions on specific things within the game. When I first watched the 5 clips in the tray, I was instantly drawn in. Here is this woman who is seemingly shocked over Simon's murder, only to have completely about-faced and is now being accused of killing Simon herself.
And all these stories we've been telling each other. Just that. Stories.
So after I watched the first few clips, I digged around on the desktop to see what was on it, and was pleased by the details they had put into the applications. I wish there was more of them, but there are enough to give the illusion that this is a real computer and isn't just a machine with one software application. I had also felt very smart about myself by discovering the game in the trash, whose title was actually thematically relevant to the game, but at the time I did not know. Why didn't they just call this game some variation of Checkers, I said to myself. Anyways, I instinctively checked the clock and saw the current date was 2015. I decided then and there that this game's purpose was reopening this case, and deciding who the killer was, and that there was going to be a new trial that would go wrong later on, involving a shootout or a chase. I made this inference because I looked at the controls for the game, which listed jump and fire 1, 2, and 3. However, this was a twisteroo. When I started to search for more clips using keywords, the first of which I used was Simon, I saw that there were more clips, and at a glance to the thumbnail, I assumed it was a different person, but it was the same person in these new clips too. After getting through a lot of the clips, I realized that some of these clips were depicting a different person whose name was Diane.
Have you met his wife, Diane?
Wait a minute, no. Diane is Eric's wife. I think this woman's name is Eve. Or Hannah. So many names in this game. She was Simon's wife. I thought the other woman who looked exactly like her was his wife.
Well, my friend Eve. I mean, she was a friend from when I was a kid. My name is Hannah. H-A-N-N-A-H.
So, it turns out that these two women are identical twins, separated at birth, and living from what I've gathered literally across the street from one another. Eventually, they end up living together, and posing as one another, using each other's strengths, and pretending to be one person instead of two.
We never had any reason to notice. They were always busy. If Hannah was eating a lot, didn't mind. She didn't put on any weight. That girl has a healthy appetite. If they heard us talking in the attic, they just thought it was Hannah playing one of her games, and that Eve was our imaginary friend. Once, she was already up and dressed and ready to go to school, and I snuck down for a piss. Mum saw me in my underwear, she went mad. Get dressed this instant! So I ducked into our bedroom, and seconds later, out came Hannah, dressed and ready. Mum was amazed.
The woman in the first few clips is named Eve, but confusingly, Hannah also says she calls her Eve. However, Hannah and Eve are two different people, pretending to be one. I think this use of monikers is meant to serve the purpose of dehumanizing Eve in Hannah's mind, since it's also obvious that Hannah just considers Eve her mirror. However, this actually just serves to confuse the players more, as there is only one clip that identifies Hannah as Eve. Removing the names from the twins and calling them Sister A and Sister B pretty much deobfuscates the entire plot. This is just an added layer of complexity that might appear unnecessary from the outside, if it didn't look clear that Hannah and Eve are intentionally trying to embellish and deceive their way through these events. At this point, I started to get a Machiavellian vibe from both of the sisters. From there, I started to feel like I was getting craftier too. From the get-go, I had just been listening for keywords to search, but soon I started to think of words that might appear in the context, like knife, throat, and twin, which drew me into even more clips. One thing I feel this game doesn't do well is it feels like the game is forcefully patting you on the back and telling you, "Good job, you found the next important piece," instead of letting the players decide for themselves what is important and what is not. After finishing a few select important clips, the player's screen will abruptly show a reflection, usually with a sound cue, after which the game will change its soundtrack to better match the mood of how you are supposed to feel on the inside. However, I would largely ignore this, as I had come up with the next keyword I was going to explore before the screen told me I was going in the right direction. This is the type of game that you really feel the need to write things down and take real-life notes. Here's mine. This only serves to heighten the experience as it feels natural, and you are writing things down to search for in the real world, which adds another layer to the game. From there you learn some more things about Hannah and Eve's relationship with Simon and each other. The two twins would spend a lot of time hanging around one another. It's clear though, Hannah felt contempt for Eve, but largely the two of them both felt special in the world like princesses.
There were always princes and princesses. They were the special people, more important than the other characters in their stories. We knew we were like that. Twins. Magical. We were the princesses.
There are clips about pictures that Hannah looks at. Clips of Eve singing this song. Clips of Hannah talking about this mirror she got as a present from Simon. These clips are interesting when you see them without context, but as soon as you figure out Hannah and Eve's relationship and their mutual feelings for Simon, their mirrored infertility, and that they both were involved in the events leading up to Simon's murder and indirectly his murder, well, directly for one of them, you feel as if these clips lack in subtlety. It's almost as if this game is saying to the player, "Look, I'm capable of making a reasonably complicated and symbolic metaphor for these characters. I'm very literary and deep. You should respect me." I think this wasn't the intent, however. I recognize this game could do with a bit more subtlety, but at the same time I don't fault it for being so transparent in context, because it does very little to truly ruin the experience due to Viva's excellent acting. It would be unbearable though if the metaphors and clips didn't have as much symbolic depth as they did though. The game is different in that the intricacies of the plot can get much more interesting and deep than the symbolism it throws at you. Eventually, by searching for Florence, the player will come across a clip where Eve talks about how Florence's story was really within her diary, and that it's amazing what people will write down.
When I found her diary, I also found a biscuit tin with other stuff in it. Older papers, letters, that kind of thing. Her story was in there. She wrote all this stuff in a diary. Amazing what people will admit to on paper.
At this point, it was blatant that both the name drop in the dialogue and the closing statements were meant to be applicable to Eve and Hannah as well. The whole song is a metaphor for the love triangle in this game as well. Eventually, the player learns that despite being infertile, Hannah eventually conceived and named her daughter Sarah. Or maybe it was Eve. I have a hard time keeping track. One of the sisters conceived. When you get sufficiently far enough, you get an AOL-styled IM from someone asking you if you are ready to go. I figured this was going to take me to the next part of the game, where this shootout I thought was going to happen was going to take place. But since I had more clips to uncover, I stayed a while and found some more stuff. Eventually I went back and was ready, only to learn that I was Sarah, and that this was the game's end. At this point, the player is supposed to realize why they came here, and what this was all about, and I did. I felt shocked, then happy that the game was able to properly subvert my expectations. It's clear that Sarah grew up without her mother, and spending time wondering why. I saw the credits at their end, and felt content with my experience. You know, I'm surprised that this small game could take me through such a good ride. I'm pretty relieved too, because I had almost passed this game up for being experimental. I think the lesson to be learned here is that gamers should always be willing to play new things and try new experiences, because that next game around the corner might just be a hidden gem. Thanks for watching. Fahad Syed from Pixel Icons, signing out. Have a wonderful day.